Hey, Arman here. Welcome to the NSP Nutrition Show, where we cover training, nutrition, supplementation strategies, and a whole lot more. So stand by. Hey, and welcome to the NSP Nutrition Show. I'm Arman Eckelbarger.
I'm Frank Mills, and wow, another holiday. If you celebrate holidays like we do, Merry Christmas. Hope you had a good one. We did. I got stuff in my stocking, Armin. I got my supplements, so I'm pretty happy about that, along with some other good stuff. But how about you? How did yours go?
Well, I got to a lot of the things that you put on the list, and it wasn't too dramatic, but the wife wants to go on a trip, so we got a trip planned that was funded that
Oh,
it funded most of our buying gifts. So it was, for us, it was just mostly that, but for the kids, we got them some stuff. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
well, it's a time of year that I like to give thanks, and we're thankful for you for watching, for listening to
Yeah.
the show. We appreciate you, and thank you so much for doing so. We've got a great show for you today. Today, Armin and I were going to talk about how on why Armin thinks that bodybuilders are dying so young. It's kind of a morbid topic there, Armin, but we're going to be
Yeah.
talking about
Uh,
that. And then in the second part of the show, of course, we have your fan questions, and we'll be looking forward to answering that. So, all right, so let's get started, Armin. Wow, why bodybuilders are dying so young? This is definitely a interesting topic. What
mm.
made you decide to speak about this one? Because this is kind of a little different from anything that we've done.
Well, the thing is that you keep seeing it popping up in the different social media aspects and in the
Yeah.
media. That these people are, they're making note of how young they are, and to me, it's creating a really bad name for people that do bodybuilding or just do physique developing to, to do a show or to just make themselves look and feel better.
Hmm.
So, basically, if you follow a bodybuilding or physique style lifestyle, then you're gonna basically, according to what the media has been seeing going on, well, you're gonna probably everybody's like, "Hey, you're gonna die young. So why are you
Hmm.
doing that?" And you know, it's I think it's several things that are involved that I feel is causing it, and the steroids are obviously part of that, but it's not the only reason, in my opinion. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, there is a lot of use that is much more intense than back in the older days. But at the same
Hmm.
time, I think it's a combination of things on top of that.
Hmm. Well, to a point, I 100% agree with you, but I do think why that perception is, at least maybe one of the reasons,
Mm,
is, and actually we were talking about this the other night, some friends and I, um, we see a lot of athletes that pass
mm,
away at a young age. You know,
yeah,
uh, Not all of them die at an older age. There's been a lot of tragic, I would say, passings of athletes in their 30s and 40s and 50s. And that's not a
yeah.
particular age where you think somebody's going to pass away. You think of more after 60 or 70 is when you're really thinking about, okay, that makes sense. But I was curious on talking about the steroid part. Why were you saying that? I was kind of curious.
Well, don't get me wrong. I mean, I think steroids are definitely a strong contributor.
Right.
But when I look back at the bodybuilders from the '60s and the '70s, and even some from the '80s, early '80s, there are a lot of them are they're living in what could be considered a normal lifespan,
Right.
and they're still around, even though they took some steroids. So that's one thing that caused me to think a little bit about it. But then, as an example, I'm talking about like Larry Scott. Okay, now he lived to 75, but he had Alzheimer's, so
Right.
that's just something that became a problem. But then you got Arnold, you got Lou Ferrigno, you've got Frank Zane, you got Robbie Robinson. Then you have younger guys like Lee Haney and Barry DeMay. I mean, these people all, took some drugs at some level, but they're still alive and they're not dropping like flies. So
Right.
I'm like, okay, there's got to be other factors here. Now, obviously, these guys are taking the steroids. It's hard to say if they're even cycling off or off at all because they're trying to win. But I think there's other things in combination with that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, this guy wasn't a bodybuilder, but he was a fitness guy. And growing up, I remember seeing Jack LaLanne everywhere, right?
Oh
And
yeah,
he was a very older guy when he passed, and he lived the lifestyle to a point as well.
yeah.
So I hear what you're saying. So what are you suggesting the other reasons may be, Armin?
Well, after thinking through, what the lifestyle that a lot of these people are going through, in my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
I think it has to deal with insulin. Since I've learned a lot about
Oh.
insulin, and I think a good chunk of these guys are dying. Like Mike and Ray Mincer. Mike Mincer was one of the guys that first promoted carbohydrate intake. You do carbohydrates versus fats. You do low fat and high carb. And they pushed that, and people started switching to that. Then you
Mm-hmm.
got guys like Mountain Dog, John Meadows. He was 49, but a high carb eater. Mike Matarazzo, age 48. Paul DeMayo, he was only 37.
Wow.
And then Sean Roden, who won the Olympia several years ago, 46. Phil Hernon, he got to age 55. I mean, the list goes on and on, but at the same time, uh, I feel like because of their nutritional intake that they
Mm-hmm.
got insulin resistance, and I think that was a pretty big contributor to
All right, that's actually pretty interesting.
it.
Yeah, so why do you say insulin resistance?
So, based on the nutrition regimens that were promoted, that these guys were promoting, and that they were living, and especially the young guys today, you're eating protein and carbs as your main focus, and you're going to have 5 to 7 meals a day. All right, all day long, and then you're minimizing fat intake because you want to stay lean. But the carbohydrates still make you fat, but they burn that off with doing extra cardio, which is kind of stupid in my opinion. But
Mm-hmm.
that's what they're doing. So some of them, I think, on top of this, especially the new breed of bodybuilders, they're doing this insulin loading,
Hmm.
which is really serious. I wouldn't recommend that to anybody, but that's what they're doing. The strategy is, after you get done training, you have all your food ready, and because you just got training, you've broken down a lot of muscle, all the food's ready, and then you take a shot of insulin. And after you take that insulin, then you got to eat as much food as you can because that insulin is going to be really high and it's going to push those nutrients into the cells, and that tend to work. They would load the cells up more from that extreme amount of insulin. So even if you're not insulin loading, you got insulin flowing all day long to process the carbohydrate intake, and that cannot be good long term.
Mm-mm.
Keeping
No.
these levels high, people need to understand insulin is actually toxic to the system. It starts causing damage when it stays elevated, and because it's so ongoing, your cell receptor sites can't keep up. So now you become insulin resistant. So then the excess that's floating around is going to start creating the problems that it creates. And that's just my thoughts. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm sure a lot of us are thinking, because that's the first thing I thought is, how does insulin resistance cause someone to die young? I mean, how does that work,
Yeah.
Armin?
Again, so since I've been researching all this kind of stuff,
Uh-huh.
what happens is insulin resistance is going to lead to other conditions. It leads to, obviously leads to diabetes, but it also leads to fatty liver disease. It leads to cardiovascular disease and other metabolic syndrome. And on top of that, it creates obesity. So now in the bodybuilder world, not so much for them, but they're getting these other issues cropping up. So what I've learned is insulin resistance doubles your risk for a heart attack and stroke. And
Hmm.
not only does it double it, it triples the odds that your heart attack or brain attack, the stroke, will be deadly. And this comes
Hmm.
from the International Diabetes Federation. So I'm like, yeah, and that kind of just makes sense to me. These guys are dying of heart attacks. They're moving along, and then boom. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of them, because like John Meadows, I know he was on metformin to keep his glucose readings back in control.
Mm-hmm.
That's a sign he was having insulin resistance right there. But they won't back off once this happens. Like, well, I'll just do something else, but I want to keep eating the way I'm eating because they don't know how to change it. That's
Hmm.
just my thoughts on that.
That's kind of scary, you know. I mean, yeah, that's most definitely something that you don't want to do is to pump your system full of insulin like that. Um, that's
Well,
kind
that's
of
my thoughts.
scary. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So, I mean, I'm kind of curious, yeah, because we're two older guys. Why do you
right.
feel it wasn't so much of an issue for the older bodybuilders compared to the others? I mean, gosh, you mentioned quite a few.
Yeah. Okay, so again, in my opinion, based on what I've been learning, in those times, most of the bodybuilders they were doing a lot of Vince's strategies, where it was
Hmm.
protein and fats, and so the focus being that they're not eating a lot of carbohydrates, and so insulin resistance was probably not going to be a big issue for them. I'm not saying they didn't maybe change their lifestyle down the road, but a lot of like whatever lifestyle you're leading that works for you, you're going to continue to follow it. And so, and it's something that I'm watching now too. But you know, the concept of insulin loading was never mentioned back in those days, and so
Right.
these guys weren't having a whole ton of carbs. They actually weren't wanting to mess with them because when you eat protein and fat, you stay lean, and you don't get insulin resistance when you eat protein and fat.
Hmm.
And that's what people are starting to wake up to. That's a better way to eat versus having all this carb intake.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Well, I am curious, you know, because of how things are trending, what else do you think may be contributing to this?
So the other thing that may be doing that is based on my study of aging over the past number of years, about like 6 years at this point.
Hmm.
I'm thinking that mTOR is also a factor.
Okay, mTOR. What is that? Because I sure did know.
Uh, so again, this is something I've learned about as well. So mTOR stands for mammalian or mechanistic target of rapamycin.
Okay.
So it is this is a key component of cellular metabolism, and that what it does, it integrates the nutrient sensing with cellular processes, are which basically going to fuel growth and proliferation. Basically, it's known as the growth pathway, mTOR. So they think mTOR growth pathway. It's going to help you to build muscle tissue. It also helps boost your immunity. So, mTOR has been linked to various processes that are related to aging, such as nutrient sensing and maintenance of proteostasis, which is basically protein being consistent, protein homeostasis,
Okay.
uh, autophagy, so it cannibalizes old dead cells. That's a good thing. But it has been evolved with mitochondrial dysfunction, which isn't good. And then the cellular senescence, it causes the cells to age faster. And so all this on top of it, it affects your stem cell. Um, your stem cells are going to decline in function, which
Hmm.
that is not good. You need good stem cells to be doing things. So, in a nutshell, I guess the way I would say it is if you keep mTOR switched on all the time, it's just going to cause you to age faster based on the recent research that I'm learning about. So it's something that's important to understand. And this can happen due to the body constantly, being in a growth phase because these guys are taking the hormones and then they're constantly eating protein, carbs, and they're eating a lot of food. And that's going to keep that mTOR level elevated.
So, kind of to simplify what you just said, it means your body is aging faster then, right?
Yeah, so this is my understanding that if you keep mTOR on all the time, based on the research, then you're going to age faster. So this makes sense to me with these lifestyles that you read about with these people. These people that are dying early. I mean, under normal circumstances, your mTOR is going to switch on after it switches off after the protein synthesis and the food intake have slowed down.
Hmm.
That's why I'm a big fan of just 3 meals a day. But if you're constantly eating every 2 to 3 hours, you're going to have mTOR switched on all the time. Plus, to help with the recovery of the training. And the more I learn about it, the more this is something that really needs to be paid attention to if you want to live longer. And if you don't care, then that's great. But when you're keeping it switched on all the time, you're not going to let the body be able to lower it. So it's going to allow you to
Mm-hmm.
age faster. Um, and again, these things are just my opinion based on things I've learned. So, it is what it is. But this is what I'm thinking. It could be some factors that people also need to be considerate of with how they train going forward.
And that absolutely makes perfect sense. But that's a lot of good information. Now, Arman, for all this knowledge that you've gained, are you doing things that are differently, or are you doing things maybe different in areas of the things that you've done in your life, for your training, your workout, all that good stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I've changed up a lot of things based on as I keep learning this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I do a carb cycling strategy. Okay, and I just have 3 meals a day. I don't see the need to have 5 and 6 meals a day. I just use some
Right.
supplements to maintain, muscle tissue, because they're going to come and go pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So I mostly focus on protein and fat, and then I use the carbs as needed just to reload the muscles in the liver. So I don't have insulin cranking all day long. And if it is, it's going to drop down pretty quickly. And I think that's another reason why people are seeing better results with like a carnivore diet or a low
Mm-hmm.
carb diet. But I like the carb cycling strategy because I do get the foods that I don't want to take out of the my food system to keep the gut microbiome functioning at a high level. So, but it does allow me to keep my insulin sensitivity because I'm tracking that closely. Because that's obviously an important factor. The more I learn about it,
Mm-hmm.
so what I'm doing is tracking my carb intake, and then I'll have periodic blood work to see how my glucose and my HbA1c levels are. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
making sure that they're staying in a healthy range because when they're not, that's the first sign of insulin resistance, and that's not what you want to have happen because then
Right.
you need to be going on pre-diabetic medication. But that's why we have rampant diabetes in society is because of what these people are eating, and they're not paying attention to these markers. Even the doctors
Right.
aren't really enforcing it much. Like, well, here's a prescription. Um, Here, take this.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then when I have a carb meal, I'm going to take it in the evening. But I also take berberine, which helps to push down it helps to lower mTOR as well, and helps to keep the insulin down after I've ate. So it doesn't keep hanging around and linger a long time. So
Mm-hmm.
it keeps my sensitivity much higher. And so when I'm doing this, I'm also keeping mTOR down at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So another thing that I also found that I've learned about I'm experimenting with all this stuff. So whether it's right or wrong, that's what I'm doing. So I'm just sharing this with people. But I've
Right.
been doing the daily fasting. It either be a 16-8 fast or 12-12 fast, depending on the schedule. And then that's going to be daily. But then one day a week, I'm doing a 24-hour fast. And which people are like, well, how do you do that when you're trying to pack on muscle? Okay, well, and when you do a fast like this, it does lower the mTOR, which okay, that makes sense. And I got growth mTOR working when I need growth, but then I don't when I don't need it, I got it lower, so it's not going to affect me so much, as far as aging. All right, and so then as I keep improving my insulin sensitivity, then this is when I do the when you do fasting like a 24-hour fast, not only does it improve the insulin sensitivity, but it also has a lot of benefits where it's going to clear out undigested proteins that may not broken down, which is good news. It's also going to cannibalize old senescent cells that aren't functioning well. Because as you age,
Mm-hmm.
you get a buildup of these cells, and that's
Right.
what causes
Right.
the aging to move faster. So it cannibalizes those, and then it also helps generate new stem cells from bone marrow by the stress that's created by 24-hour fast. So I'm experimenting with all this stuff, but I like how I feel, and I'm noticing some benefits from it. So that's why I thought it'd be a good thing to bring up because the lifestyle these other people are doing, they're just going at it nonstop, and the body gets no breaks.
Right. Right. Hmm. That's wow, a ton of great information, and I'm sure a lot of people appreciate you sharing all of this because you definitely there are things that a lot of people do that you think, hey, it's working great. And what you're sharing
Yeah.
is, hey, always be maybe rethinking what you're doing and analyzing, because you may feel great, but you could really be doing something to hurt yourself. And boy, this is a really interesting subject today. Um, I know we're very limited on time, but is there any final thoughts that you have kind of wrapping things up on a terrific segment?
Well, we'll see how terrific it is based on people's response. But
Right, right.
I mean, these are just my opinions, on what I think is contributing to these.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of athletes. It's not just bodybuilders. There's other
Oh,
athletes
right. Oh,
too,
yeah, yeah.
and they're dying at an early age. Okay, and I think they need to be looking at what they're doing to keep their nutrition at a good level so that they aren't damaging themselves. And I think that people, when you're an athlete, they think that you're living a healthier lifestyle, and you would think they are, but maybe not. And the
Mm-hmm.
other thing is when you throw some steroids on top of that, you're going to amplify the issue, if
Right.
not helping. So that's another thing. I mean, you get temporarily, you get the benefits of quick growth, but there's always a price to pay for something that happens quickly. Because like when you do these drugs that they're doing, their heart is growing,
Mm-hmm.
their liver, their kidneys, all their organs are growing because it's tissue, it's muscle tissue. It has to expand with the digestive system and also the skeletal system. So at the end of the day, I mean, I'm a firm believer that the right combination of nutrition, supplementation, weight training, recovery, you're getting that sleep, and then getting your hormones optimized done in a way that will lead to better longevity as much as Vince did. Vince was a big fan of this. He thought bodybuilding was great news because of the health factors that he saw.
Hmm.
And so I'm on the same page as Vince on this. But as Vince is too, I'm thoroughly disappointed by what's going on in the competitive world of physique competitions and contests. And you see these people, male and female, working their butts off, training hard and dealing with all the stress of getting the workouts in and working and doing all these things. And then they're taking these health risks and they're doing all that for some short-lived returns
Right.
that they're going to find themselves dying much earlier than they need to, and it just doesn't make sense to me. So why do you want to go in that path? But it's giving a bad name to the physique world, period. And
Yeah.
we need to start thinking, okay, if they're going to do that, they do that, not promote that so much, and let's move towards promoting people to live in a lifestyle that does allow you to live longer. And that's kind of what I'm getting at with the whole thing.
Absolutely agree. Well, Armin, I thought the segment was terrific. A lot of great information, and very much appreciate you sharing all that information and knowledge with us. We've got to take a break. Stand by for a quick word from NSP Nutrition, and Armin and I will be right back.
Hey, welcome back to the NSP Nutrition Show. I'm Armin Eckelbarger.
I'm Frank Mills, and hey, this is my favorite part is your fan questions. But before we get into that, I have to let you know, boy, if you're not taking advantage of the sales on nspnutrition.com to get your supplementation, I don't know
Mm-hmm.
what you're waiting for. Some of the prices on there are well worth your while for multivitamin, protein powder, whatever you need. Oh my gosh. I'm glad I got some for Christmas, but I have stocked up because there is some great pricing going on. So I encourage
Mm-hmm.
you, take advantage of it while you can, because it won't be much longer. Man, amazing deals, huh, Armin?
Yeah, well, they're trying to close out the year, obviously, but the inventories are running low, so that's the biggest thing that people are going to be dealing with. As you know, we do run out of product from time
Mm-hmm.
to time, which is frustrating, but it is what it is. But yeah, you want to get in. I'll try to get in now before the inventories get too low, because the restocking sometimes takes a while because of all the things going on in the economy.
Yeah, I got all my protein powder, all three flavors, so I can mix it
Yeah,
up as I want to. But yeah, hey, it's a terrific deal. So take advantage of it while you can. All right. Fan questions. I love doing this because I like to hear what you guys and girls are thinking about either fitness, working out,
yeah,
whatever, the feedback on the show, ideas. We like to hear that and we appreciate it. Um, this is coming from Andy Shelton. Andy Shelton's asking us, Arman, will you give us exercise equipment mods to fit what we have available? So I guess depending on your workout, I've heard this from a lot of people. If they travel, um, if they're going different places, they're used to going to the gym and having a set of equipment that they
yeah.
can do a set of exercises on. Then they travel and go to a different gym and they're screwed. They don't know what to do. They don't know what machine does what, and they end up winging it. Do you have any suggestions for that?
Well, that's a tough one because even with myself, when I go in, I got a lot of experience. So when I go into the gym,
Mm,
I got to survey the whole situation and see, okay, what do I have to work with? And then depending
right.
on what I'm training that day, how do I want to combine that workout too? So there's not a real easy one for that because again, it's limited to the equipment that you have. So
Hmm.
the biggest thing is to figure out what muscle groups you're going to work. Okay, if you already know that going into it, then you just got to figure out, okay, what equipment can I use to get as much return from that workout as possible. So
Hmm.
a lot of times it may just be dumbbells, and so you need to have a backup plan if they just have nothing but dumbbells. Like a lot of hotels, it's pretty thin. So
Hmm.
you'll have some dumbbells, or maybe it's going to be a high rep day, and just you work hard with that, and but train real hard within that 30 to 45 minute window, and
Right. Right.
see what you can get done. Maybe it's going to be doing some supersets, some giant sets, just using what's available to really tax the muscles. But there's no easy answer when you get thrown into an area that you don't have much equipment. So creativity is a good one, but that comes from experience and training. So I don't have an easy answer for that. But now in the on the app that we use, there is options in there. We have an option with dumbbells, we have an option with barbell, and then even bands as another thing. But other than that, body
Hmm.
weight, there's not a lot of options on body weight outside of push-ups and pull-ups and
Hmm.
body squats and things like that and lunges.
Okay. All right. Well, Andy, hopefully that helps you out. Next
Uh,
question is from Walter. Walter is 73 years old. Loves
wow.
our
Okay.
show. Thank you,
Oh,
Walter.
good. Uh,
Loved the episode on the Liver King.
oh,
He
really?
said, he said, I knew damn well that guy didn't live a natural life with how he looked. That's his exact words.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, he said, as far as maybe back in my day, and Walter, I'm not far behind you, brother. So he's back in his day. He said when he grew up, he ate what was on the dinner table: lean meats,
Yeah.
wild game,
Yeah.
vegetables. They had fruit, and that was it. He said, we didn't eat out of a box. We
Yeah.
didn't buy anything pre prepared. My mom cooked on the stove, and all his family lived a long time. And their
Yep.
natural workout was working on the farm, dealing with
Yeah.
horses and ranching and that kind of stuff. And, you know, we've talked about this, Armin. Back then, that lifestyle, people physically had to work hard for the most part. And a lot of
Oh,
the
yeah.
food that we did eat, it was protein, vegetables, fruit, period.
Yeah. And the fruit was always seasonal. So that's
Mm-hmm.
another thing too. And then, you didn't have as much food to eat. It wasn't like you can have all you wanted. I remember, I was five, I got three, four brothers and sisters. And so, we are all kind of competing for food. And they had large families back in the day.
Right, right. And, I've seen in several of the movies, the last drumstick or the last piece of meat, right?
Uh,
People sticking forks in it, right? Trying to get it.
yeah.
Yeah. So,
Uh,
yeah, but that's how it was. And, now we're in the world of, going to a buffet or all you can eat supersizing and fast food and
uh,
processed food. And really, that's where our world has taken a bad left turn, I think.
Oh, it's horrible. I mean, that's where he has so much health issue going on.
Yeah.
And again, like we talked about earlier, this is aging people faster because of all the inflammation and all the insulin resistance, and
Mm-hmm.
and they're all on medications to try to to put. It's like putting a bunch of band-aids on. You're all
Right, right,
bandaged up, but you're not getting any better. You're just not getting any better. So,
right. Well, Walter, we appreciate your feedback and
yep.
your question. Thank you so much, and happy you enjoy the show. Last question is from James 197091. It's on YouTube. James, thanks for commenting. He says, it's so disappointing you never hear Arnold give credit or thanks or acknowledgement to Vince. He feels that he did a lot for him. And I started thinking about Arman. There are people that have acknowledged Vince, but he's kind of right there. There's a lot of guys out there that have taken things from Vince and not really ever said anything about him, and it's sad.
Well, I think some of that stems from Vince's demeanor, and he did offend Arnold, probably more than one occasion. Just trying to get him to understand, dude, there's a lot to know here, and you don't know anything. You may think you do, but you don't. And his delivery probably wasn't good. So, and Arnold was only there for a year, and he didn't like the environment at the time. So, he obviously moved on. But at the end of the day, I think Arnold learned a lot of his cutting techniques to get lean for shows from Vince. Because I mean, Arnold got in really good shape, and Vince was the only guy that had the knowledge at that time. And if you looked at Arnold, I mean, he was ripped, but he had in my opinion, he learned it from Vince, because when you looked at him before he was pretty smooth. Okay. And he knew he had to get leaner. So, but he's probably not giving him a lot of credit because he irritated him or something. I knows the real reality of it. But, he did have a picture of him when he wore the tank top and he was in there training. But I just think that, they just weren't meshing, because Arnold was really young. Vince was older, and, he's looking at him like, hey, you're just a young kid. You don't really know that much. But he was like, well, I know a little bit more than you think. Anyways, that's kind of my thoughts on it. So,
interesting point. So, James, we appreciate your comment. And, we are always looking for more questions, more content, more feedback from you.
Yeah.
If you want to contact us, scan the QR codes above our heads. That's one way. The other way, comment on YouTube. Arm and I, we check that out all the time. And also, if all else fails, you can email at support@nspnutrition.com. And man, Arman, another great show. Appreciate it so much.
Hopefully we'll see what everybody thinks. But I was just trying to, keep working on unique content to make sure we're covering things that are important to people.
All right. Well, we're looking forward to a new year, 2023. We wish you all happy holidays, and we'll see you next week with another brand new episode of the NSP Nutrition Show.